we're living a momentous time in open source. I think it was great to hear from Bhupesh to really look at sort of how FINOS works and be very specific as to what the call to actions for you are. This is not just a conference. This is not just a talking shop. Taking action now, it's what matters. And we think that this is an environment where everyone can feel empowered to do so, where your individual motivators align with your company motivators. So you hear a lot around ROI and some of our projects later today in the keynote. But I want to also set the stage a little bit. I would guess if you're here, you know about open source in the industry, you know about open source, but there's a few new folks here. So I think it's really important to sort of set the stage as to what's going on more broadly in the open source ecosystem out there. And it's a very, very exciting time. Most organizations are making open source a cornerstone of their AI strategy. Over the last year, we witnessed the commoditization of frontier models. We witnessed the rise of agentic AI. By and large, that is driven by open source innovation. This is one of the reports, one of the many reports that our fantastic Linux Foundation research puts out every year on the impact of open source AI. This is a staggering number in terms of how much impact has had in technology and accelerating innovation over the last year. But it's not just a technology impact. And that's, I think, for me, what really changed this year and what has, in a way, fueled our focus on sort of commercially aligned ROI. You're probably familiar with the DeepSeek moment earlier in the year. It certainly turned quite a bit of heads. And I would say it attracted the attention of folks that are not necessarily technologists. When the market crashed, folks from the business started looking at, OK, what's this open source thing? I guess it's not just a techie thing. And whilst sort of the initial reaction was sort of a geopolitical conversation, is it US versus China? I think Jan LeCun put it well. The correct reading here is open source models are surpassing proprietary ones. Now, I don't want to over-index on the specific open source models versus proprietary model. But it's definitely true that throughout the year, we've seen from a business standpoint, from a funding standpoint, from a technology standpoint, the positioning of open source being only strengthened within the AI sort of growth. This is not to say that there are no geopolitical implications. And again, that's my point. It's not just technical. It's not just economic. It's geopolitical. My second hat, I work at Linux Foundation Europe. And we have a lot of conversations on digital sovereignty there. It's a big, big top-of-mind conversation. But most recently, we've seen OpenAI open source their frontier models. And by and large, this was also driven by a geopolitical question. It was pretty clear, per Sam Altman, that otherwise the world was going to run on Chinese open source models. And so again, I think the point that I'm trying to make here is how critical open source is, not just for technology, but for, again, the bigger picture. I was trying to generate a word cloud around agentic, and the word cloud kind of looked like just practically MCP only. So I just figured I'll put it out there. Again, if you think about MCP and what's happening with agentic AI, again, open source lives at the very core of how we're going to build agents. I think it is a really exciting time. As more and more interests are built around open source and hinge on open source, that strengthens the need. I would say it matters more than ever right now that if large organizations, competitive organizations, work together on open source software, open source is not enough. There has to be neutral ownership. There has to be open governance. Over the last 3 years, for those of you who live in the technology world, you've seen several open source vendors changing their license. Clearly, having a neutral space is what enables these technologies to stick and build upon, being able to manage your risk effectively, your technology risk. And so I'm super excited to see over the last, even this is just probably the last 3 months, I think, starting from June. A2A was contributed to the Linux Foundation to have a neutral ownership. React just launched their intent to join the Linux Foundation about 2 weeks ago. DocumentDB, with the support of the 3 major cloud service providers, as a DocumentDB truly openly governed alternative. It's not just self-serving. This is really to say, if you then, we'll talk about many ways that open source delivers ROI, but if you sort of look at the crux of what we do as a foundation is to provide a neutral governance, a neutral IP ownership that you all, highly competitive firms, can build upon safely, knowing that it's going to stay open forever. And that is why I'm very excited to continue seeing members joining the foundation. Those of you who were here in the first years know that we've been supported early in the days. It was largely a sell-side driven organization. Some of the largest financial investment banks were our platinum members. But that has changed as our projects, as you hear, span across all layers of the stack, especially in the sort of investment banking, capital markets workflow, and across. We are starting to see members joining from all the different constituencies of the industry. We have now several buy-side members, market data provider and financial FMIs. We have all the large cloud service providers and AI providers, consulting firms that see value in building on our practices and technologies, and especially excited this year to see, besides trade associations who've been with us for a while, academia joining. We have Columbia who's joined. We have others that are in the process of joining. So I think, again, this is a true proof that open source in this industry can deliver value to each constituency. It's not, obviously, charity. Each one is doing it for a specific business value that we'll hear about it today, but it's a positive sum game. On this note, I want to thank our 17 new members that joined us this year. I'm not going to read them one by one, promise, but I want to call out what I like about this slide is the diversity of our members, both in terms of the type of company, again, as we just discussed, as well as increasingly global nature. We now have Japanese members, we have Chinese members, we have Australian members. Again, this is a proof that this is a global organization, which largely maps the globality of the financial system. 2 more things before I tee up our next speakers. Bhupesh showed you sort of the variety of our projects. I want to show more of a time-bound progression. These are the projects that joined us this year. All the way from architecture as code. You'll hear a lot about Calm today. It's a project that is very much up and coming. To SIGs, our AI governance framework. OpenGRIS is a high HPC standard. But what I want to call out about this slide is also the growth of our labs organization. Not many of you maybe know that we have a sort of low-friction, early-stage GitHub organization called FINOS Labs. That allows for fast innovation. It doesn't have the whole sort of life cycle and bureaucracy, I would say, as our main FINOS organization. We ended up creating about 150 new repositories in that organization this year. Now, obviously, we want to see not all of those projects are going to be successful. Not all of those projects are in their most mature stage. But I think it's important to see that as we bring together more and more developers, last year we had over 3,600 of them at developer events, whether it's hackathons or tech sprints that we ran, again, across the globe. these folks need a place to collaborate. And so many of them came to us and say, hey, I don't need a full-blown project, but can you have a neutral space under FINOS where I can collaborate with my counterparts? Many of these hackathons had mixed teams, from 3, 4 different organizations. And in a very time-intensive industry like this, actually bringing people together on a day where they all can work on code really accelerates our projects and also allows you as global members to engage your population outside of New York and London. Hopefully next year we'll be able to run other conferences beyond these 2 locations. So I want to thank all of our contributors who really put so much time on this. Now, switching gears. Why do companies contribute so much to open source? I think that's one of the questions that we're going to answer today as we bring up our next speakers. Where is the ROI? I don't know if you know, but this is a study from last year from our next speakers participated to this study. But it was estimated that enterprises, companies, contribute more than 7.7 billion a year to open source. And that comes in the, as Bhupesh said, not just in terms of funding, but in terms of sweat equity and resources contributed upstream to open source projects. And I would argue that this figure doesn't include investment. This is a crowd that should be pretty, I would say, receptive to investment in commercial open source startups. This is a research that we just published together with the European VC, Serena. Talks about everything commercial open source. Not only this is now a category that is very established as a venture investment category. We're talking about 9 billion investment per year. But if you look just at 2024, I think we're going to blow that number. 26 billions were invested in commercial open source ventures last year. And that obviously is largely fueled by AI. We've got the Mistral, the Databricks mega rounds, XAI, Reflection AI just 2 weeks ago. But again, it's all across the stack. And so I want people to start thinking that besides the cost savings and the innovation potential, there's actual return of investment also from your investment side of the house.